What if a simple act of kindness could change your life forever? Maggie's journey from a small art studio in Portland to a life-altering encounter on a cross-country train will leave you believing that the smallest gestures can lead to the most extraordinary transformations. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're inspired by stories of kindness and life-changing moments, hit that subscribe button. We've got another amazing journey coming your way tomorrow that you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Maggie Anderson had always lived a life full of color, though her surroundings were anything but vibrant. In the heart of Portland, Oregon, she thrived as a freelance artist, creating masterpieces that could only be truly appreciated by those who understood the quiet beauty of the world. Maggie wasn't wealthy, but she had everything she needed: a small apartment filled with canvases and brushes, a quiet studio space, and the peace that comes from pursuing one's passion. Each week, Maggie hopped aboard the Amtrak, her preferred mode of travel, to teach free art classes in the small towns scattered across the Pacific Northwest. These towns, often overlooked by the bustling city life, became her sanctuary. The people she met there, from the elderly to young children, were always eager to learn. And Maggie felt a deep sense of purpose in sharing her love of art. Her days were simple, and while the future sometimes felt uncertain, Maggie's heart remained full. Art had taught her the power of connection, that a single brushstroke could open a world of possibility. And though she wasn't sure what the future held, she knew one thing for sure: her art was her way of changing lives, even if it was just one person at a time. One late autumn afternoon, Maggie returned to her small Portland studio after a long day of teaching art classes in the nearby town of Astoria. As she sat down with a cup of tea, she checked her email, a simple habit she had at the end of each day. Among the usual messages from her students and local art groups, one subject line caught her attention: invitation to the prestigious New York art exhibition. Her heart skipped a beat. Maggie had heard of the event. It was one of the most coveted art exhibitions in the country, attracting renowned artists and collectors from around the world. The email was an official invitation for her to showcase her work at this elite gathering in New York City. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of, the chance to finally be recognized in the art world. But there was a catch: it was an expensive affair. The costs for travel, accommodations, and preparation were beyond what Maggie could afford. She had saved a little from her teaching and selling small pieces, but it wasn't nearly enough to cover the expense of flying across the country. Maggie's mind raced, torn between excitement and the harsh reality of her finances. She sat back, running her fingers over the paper invitation, tracing the elegant text that spoke of prestige and opportunity. For a moment, she felt the weight of her humble life, the quiet corners of Portland where her world had always felt small. Yet this invitation was a lifeline, a chance to step beyond her comfort zone and make her mark. Maggie knew she had to take the chance. The thought of missing out haunted her, but without enough funds to fly, Maggie made an unexpected decision: she would take the train. The journey would take 3 days, but the thought of crossing the country on the Amtrak, soaking in the landscape, and arriving in New York with nothing but her determination was somehow even more exciting. This would be her adventure, the one that might finally change everything. She booked her ticket, and with a deep breath, set her sights on New York, trusting that this was the moment she had been waiting for. The train ride was long, stretching across miles of open land, quiet towns, and vast, rolling fields. Maggie found solace in the rhythmic sound of the train's wheels on the tracks, a comforting lullaby that matched the pace of her thoughts. She was in no rush. The world outside her window seemed to slow down with every passing mile, offering her time to reflect on everything that had led her here: her art, her journey, and the endless possibilities waiting for her in New York. One afternoon, as the train made a brief stop in a small, almost forgotten town, Maggie noticed a man sitting alone by the window in the next car. He was older, perhaps in his late 70s, dressed in a weathered coat, and looked out of place amidst the bustle of the station. His face was lined with age, and his hands rested gently on the arms of his seat, his posture stiff, as though he'd been traveling for much longer than a few hours. There was a quiet sadness about him, an invisible weight that seemed to hang around him like a fog. Most passengers ignored him, avoiding eye contact or sitting far away. Maggie, however, couldn't help but notice the loneliness in his eyes. There was something about the way he sat patient, withdrawn, that drew her in. Her instincts as an artist told her that there was a story there, one that needed to be heard. When the train stopped again for a break, Maggie walked over to the man. His eyes lifted, and she offered a smile. "Would you like something to eat?" she asked softly, noticing the absence of food in front of him. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded, his voice barely audible. Maggie returned with a sandwich and a coffee, setting them down in front of him. "I thought you might be hungry," she said. The man looked at her, his eyes betraying a mixture of gratitude and surprise. They didn't speak much at first. The train hummed along as they sat in companionable silence. Maggie, ever the artist, began to sketch him. As she worked, she felt a strange sense of peace. Her pencil moved across the paper, capturing the lines of his face, the wisdom etched into his expression. When she finished, she handed him the portrait, a simple gift. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "It's just a little something for you." The man's eyes softened as he looked at the drawing, his hand trembling slightly as he held it. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "No one's done something like this for me in a long time." Maggie smiled. In that moment, the uncertainty of her journey faded away. It wasn't the art exhibition in New York that mattered most anymore. It was this connection, this simple act of kindness, that felt like her true purpose. As the train continued its journey across the country, Maggie found herself more and more absorbed in the quiet companionship of the elderly man, whom she had learned was named Walter Grant. Despite his weathered appearance, there was a warmth in his gaze that she hadn't expected. Walter shared little about his past, but his gentle demeanor spoke volumes. He listened intently when Maggie spoke about her art, her dreams, and the upcoming exhibition in New York. For the first time in weeks, Maggie felt truly seen, not for her ambition or her achievements, but for her humanity. Over the next few days, the two of them spent hours talking about life, the world, and the connections people often overlook. Maggie listened closely as Walter told her stories of his time in the military, his travels as a younger man, and the years he spent as a collector of forgotten things. Though his life had been full of hardship, there was an undeniable resilience in him, a quiet strength that Maggie admired. As the train glided through the vast plains and snow-capped mountains, Maggie's heart felt lighter. She had been so consumed with the pressure of making it to New York, with the weight of expectations and uncertainty about her future. But now, she began to see things differently. The pressure, the worry, the fear of failure, they all seemed so insignificant compared to the genuine connection she had just made. The small act of kindness, sitting with Walter, sharing a meal, and drawing his portrait, had shifted something inside her. Maggie realized that art wasn't just about creating beautiful things for an audience. It wasn't about fame, recognition, or financial success. It was about the quiet moments the connections made, the emotions shared, the lives touched. Her purpose, she now understood, wasn't about seeking external validation, but about how she could use her gift to bring people together, to inspire kindness. and to show that every life, no matter how small or unnoticed, had a story worth telling. By the time the train pulled into New York, Maggie had already made peace with herself. She no longer saw the exhibition as the culmination of her journey, but as just another step along a much larger path. She had realized that the true essence of her art lay not in the accolades she might receive, but in the quiet moments where her work could change someone's world, one person at a time. When Maggie arrived in New York City, the hustle and bustle of the city felt overwhelming. The streets were alive with energy. The towering skyscrapers seemed to touch the sky. And the fast pace of life was a sharp contrast to the peaceful journey she had just completed. As she made her way to the art exhibition venue, her heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and nerves. This was the moment she had worked for, the chance to showcase her work among the best and brightest in the art world. She arrived at the gallery, a sleek, modern space with walls adorned with masterpieces from renowned artists. Maggie's exhibit was tucked in a corner, a modest collection of portraits and landscapes, many of which focused on the unseen and forgotten members of society, the elderly, the homeless, and the overlooked. Despite the grandeur of the venue, her corner felt intimate, like a quiet invitation for reflection. The exhibition was bustling with visitors, artists, collectors, critics, and admirers of fine art. Maggie's eyes scanned the crowd, hoping for a glimpse of someone who might be interested in her work, but the sea of faces seemed indifferent. Moving quickly from one piece to the next, she felt a flicker of doubt, wondering if her art had a place in such a high-profile event. Would anyone truly appreciate her message of kindness and connection? Just as Maggie was beginning to lose herself in thought, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she came face to face with none other than Walter Grant, the elderly man from the train. Only now, he was dressed in a fine suit, his weathered face still present but softened by the presence of wealth and status. "I see you've made it," he said with a warm smile. Maggie blinked in disbelief. "Walter, what? How did you—" "I'm not just some old man on a train," he replied with a chuckle. "I'm Walter Grant. I've been collecting art for years, and I've seen many artists in my time. But you? Your art speaks to something deeper." Maggie's heart skipped a beat. The man she had shared a simple meal with, the man she had drawn in the quiet of the train, was not just anyone, he was a respected art collector. He had watched her work and seen the depth of her heart in each brushstroke. Moved by her genuine kindness, Walter offered Maggie an opportunity she could never have imagined. "I want to support you. I believe in your work. Maggie, let me be your patron. And I'll introduce you to the right people in the art world." Und. Maggie stood frozen, overwhelmed by the surreal twist of fate. Her simple act of kindness had not only brought her an unexpected connection, but it had also opened the door to a world she had only dreamed of. This wasn't just an art exhibition. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter that would allow her to reach even more people with her message, the power of kindness, the importance of connection, and the transformative nature of art. With Walter's support, Maggie's life took a dramatic turn. She found herself invited to prestigious galleries, where her art was finally recognized on a grand scale. But as the exhibitions grew in size and prestige, so did Maggie's sense of purpose. She realized that the world of high art, filled with acclaim and admiration, was not where her heart truly lay. Her work wasn't about capturing the perfect image or impressing critics. It was about reaching people, touching lives, and giving voice to those who often went unheard. Maggie began to shift the focus of her art, rather than simply painting portraits for the sake of beauty or commercial success. She turned her attention to a deeper mission to shine a light on the invisible people of society. Her next major exhibition, titled The Invisible Faces, was centered around the lives of the elderly, veterans, and the homeless. These were the people society often overlooked, those who lived in the shadows, whose stories were rarely told. Maggie's work was a powerful reminder that everyone, no matter their background or circumstances, had a story worth sharing. The exhibition featured stark, raw portraits of individuals who had lived through hardship, but whose eyes conveyed strength and dignity. Maggie's brushstrokes captured not just their physical features, but the essence of their humanity. She painted the faces of forgotten veterans, elderly individuals whose lives had faded into obscurity, and the homeless who had no one to speak for them. Each portrait told a story of resilience, of quiet strength, and of lives lived outside the public eye. The response was overwhelming. Visitors who came to see the latest art trends were suddenly confronted with the harsh realities of life. Maggie's work didn't just evoke admiration, it sparked conversation. People began to see these individuals not as nameless faces on the streets, but as human beings with histories, emotions, and dreams. Her art opened hearts and minds, forcing people to confront their own biases and assumptions about the marginalized in society. As Maggie's reputation grew, she began to feel more fulfilled than ever before. The fame, the recognition, and the financial success were no longer what drove her. What mattered most was the impact her art had on people, how it inspired them to think differently and act with more empathy. She had found her true calling not just as an artist, but as a storyteller, a voice for the invisible. In the years that followed, Maggie continued to create powerful exhibitions focused on social issues, using her art as a platform for change. And through it all, she never forgot the lesson she had learned from Walter that sometimes it's the smallest acts of kindness, the ones that seem insignificant at the time, that can lead to the most profound transformations. As the years passed, Maggie's art continued to evolve, reaching new heights and touching more lives than she had ever imagined. Her exhibitions were now renowned for not only their beauty, but their ability to spark deep reflection and emotional connection. People from all walks of life attended her shows, and Maggie became a voice for the unheard, a champion of the invisible people she had so passionately painted. But amidst her growing success, one thing remained constant: her bond with Walter Grant, the man who had changed the course of her life. It had been several months since Maggie's last show in New York, and she hadn't seen Walter since that fateful meeting at the gallery. She had often thought about him, about the quiet wisdom he'd shared with her on the train. He had become more than a patron. He had become a mentor, someone who had reminded her of the true purpose of her art. But life had moved quickly, and Maggie hadn't had the chance to express her gratitude properly. Then, one afternoon, she received a letter from Walter. It was brief but heartfelt, inviting her to meet him at his private estate just outside the city. The letter was accompanied by a surprise, a small package wrapped carefully in brown paper. When Maggie arrived at his home, she was greeted with a warm smile and a familiar handshake. Walter looked a little older, his hair more grayed, but his eyes still held the same warmth. He led her inside, and they exchanged pleasantries before he handed her the package. "I wanted you to have this," he said, his voice soft but firm. Maggie opened the package, revealing the portrait she had drawn of him on the train all those months ago. It had been carefully framed in an elegant, golden frame, the portrait she had given him as a small token of kindness. Walter had kept it all this time, and now, as he placed it gently in her hands, Maggie felt a surge of emotion. "I want you to have it back," Walter said, his voice thick with sentiment. "This portrait is more than just a picture. It's a reminder that kindness, even in the smallest form, can change everything. You've shown that through your work, Maggie. And now, I want you to keep this as a reminder of the journey we've both been on." Maggie's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the portrait. It was more than just a drawing. It was a symbol of everything she had become, everything she had learned, and everything she had shared with the world. The portrait wasn't just about Walter, it was about the power of connection, the beauty of human kindness, and the profound impact one simple act could have. As she stood there, holding the portrait in her hands, Maggie realized that her journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. And as she looked at Walter, she knew that no matter where life took her, she would always carry the lesson he had taught her, that the smallest acts of kindness could lead to the greatest of rewards. And with that, Maggie's work as an artist and as a storyteller would continue to touch lives, one person at a time. Maggie's journey had come full circle, from the quiet art studios of Portland to the prestigious galleries of New York. She had discovered something far more valuable than fame or success, the profound impact of kindness. The portrait she had drawn for Walter, now returned to her as a cherished reminder, was more than just a piece of art. It symbolized the power of human connection, the lasting effect of selfless acts, and the unexpected paths that kindness could create. Through her journey, Maggie learned that art was not only about creating beauty, it was about telling stories that mattered, stories that could inspire change and bring people together. In the end, the greatest gift she had given wasn't her art. It was the kindness she shared with others, a gift that would keep giving for years to come. Enjoyed this video? Show your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Drop a comment and let us know what you think. Your feedback helps us create even better content.